Hello, everyone out there in the big wide world. Welcome to the Spirit Side Podcast. I'm your host, Paul James Caiden, and in today's episode, we are going to talk about the truth community, or as some call them, truthers, and conspiracy theories. Now, some of you listening to this show may have an idea or know what the truth community is or what a truther is. Most of us are familiar with the term conspiracy theory and what that entails. But in case you don't know what a truther is or what the truth community is, it is basically a group of people who look very deeply into what we call conspiracy theories. And they talk about a great number of things, whether it be chemtrails, the flat earth, the shadow government, the plans of the New World Order and the elites. And many of them have a spiritual flair to their message, and they will talk about what real religion is, what being pleasing to God really is, or what heaven or the spirit world really is, and how do we get there. Some of the folks in the truth community have a very clear-cut message that does have an element of truth to it. We can't dismiss everything these individuals say. I happen to know a lot of people who are in the truth community, and some of them have very good and valid things to say. Others have a mix of good and valid things to say mixed with, a very generous portion of insanity, okay, if I may use that word, and some are just off the rails completely. The thing about the truth community and the information that they research, again, we can't dismiss everything that they have to say, because a lot of what they look into is true. It does have a foundation. It has truth to it. There are things going on in our government, in our world, in our society, and all across the board that the average person doesn't even think about, doesn't know about, wouldn't even consider or dream of in a million years, that is actually going on in our world. Take, for instance, the topic of weaponizing the weather or controlling the weather, manipulating the weather. Most people would say, no, that's not possible. No, that's a fantasy. But actually, it's not. There's a very long paper trail. A lot of people who have talked about this in our government, in our military, and they've been working toward this goal for a very long time to be able to control, manipulate, and even weaponize the weather. Now, that sounds crazy. And my co-host on my other podcast, The People Under the Stairs, Stan Wanglin, he is a psychologist. I mean, he's a pretty big name in the county where I now reside. And we've talked about some of these things on our show, and behind the scenes, coming up with these topics, he would say, oh, I don't know about that. That's kind of like out in the weeds, And I'd say, no, Stan, just look into it. He's a good researcher. Look into it. And he would come to the show literally surprised, going, this is really a thing. Here's this document. Here's what this person said. And he'd have all this information that he would share on the podcast and come away from it with a totally different perspective that, man, some of this stuff he never even thought would be a reality, but it is. So we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because there is some information there that is very useful, very true, and it involves us all, the health of all of us on this planet, the survival of the planet, if you will, nature. I mean, there are certainly people out there who have been trying to play God for a very long time. And it can spin your brain a little bit when you hear about these things, when you begin to know that these things are a reality. But then we have in the truth community something that I personally think, and I'm sure there's other people out there who certainly agree with this, where it becomes very unhealthy. And I think it becomes very unhealthy when you hear these people talk on a podcast or a vlog or on a platform like YouTube, where they have their video podcast or vlog every day or once a week, whatever it may be. And these people are constantly on high alert. The end is nigh. Every single thing you do is manipulated and infiltrated by evil governments and military and demons and the devil. You know, everything is just saturated with so much darkness and conspiracy that you can't do anything without bringing yourself closer to either being a slave of the New World Order, certain death, being owned by the state, owned by Beelzebub, or whatever the case may be. And, you know, I know people in the truth community, sadly, these people do nothing. They don't watch TV. They don't listen to music. They don't read. They don't have any leisure time in their life. All they do is practically live researching, reading, and thinking about all this darkness or supposed darkness that is in our world and beyond. Some of them are, well, most of them are survivalists, and they spend a lot of time in the woods and camping or traveling. They don't have any family. They don't have any friends. They're not married. They don't have any kids. The holiday time rolls around, and some of them say that their families, I mean, they still have mothers and fathers that are still alive. They're, you know, these people in the truth community, they're my age, and they're early or even mid-50s, and they're blessed enough to still have mothers and fathers who are alive and well on planet Earth, begging them, just sit down and have Thanksgiving dinner with us. Just sit down and eat with us on Christmas. And they will say, nope, I want no part of it. This is nothing but a contrived holiday, by the organized religions, the Catholic Church. It's demonic. It's evil. It takes glory away from Jesus. He was never born on December 25th. This is all horrible. And they'll absolutely refuse and just, not even make an appearance. And I find that sad and not just a little disturbing. that you have family, you have parents who are still alive. They love you. You get along with them. They just want to spend time with you. These people are in their 70s and 80s now. And you can't even sit down and have a turkey dinner with them? I mean, to me, that kind of thing is quite extreme. And it's the exact opposite in action, I think, of what they're trying to preach in their message. Because many of them are very, very steeped in kind of its own brand of fundamentalism. And what's concerning about this is that from my end of the spectrum, the kind of work that I do, the kind of people that I talk to, is most of us don't realize how many, most of us probably even listening to this podcast would say, well, who cares about those people? They're nuts. That doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. But what we don't realize is how many hundreds or even thousands of people daily come across these blogs, these videos, these podcasts, and it sounds very compelling. It makes you stop and go, wow, what is this guy talking about? Because most of us know that there's something drastically wrong in the world and the system that we live in. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. So they'll hear these people talk and they'll go, I knew it. And before you know it, they're in hook, line, and sinker. And their behavior becomes very extreme. They become very dark in their thinking, in the way they choose to live their lives. And they become the kind of person who will look at their 80-year-old mother and go, I'm not going to come and eat a turkey with you on Thanksgiving or Christmas. That's satanic. You're out of your mind. I want nothing to do with it. You should be out here learning how to make cordage out of tree bark in the woods with me. There's nothing wrong with making cordage out of, tree bark or whatever. But, we need a little bit of balance here. And I think, and again, this doesn't apply to all people who are truthers or all people in the truth community. There are some, and many that I know, that are very good people, very balanced, level-headed people, very logical people, and they're not going to come out and say anything that they haven't really researched and that they really know is truth or the truth about a certain topic. And that's where we the average listener, get into trouble with a lot of this. Because I've said time and time and time again on this podcast, most of us are people who are looking for a leader. Tell us what to do. Tell us what to believe. Tell us how to live our lives and we'll do it. So they tune into somebody sitting there going, don't watch television. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. They got things in there that can rewrite reality and rewrite the electromagnetic impulses of your brain, and they could turn you into a zombie and blah, blah, all this kind of crazy crap. And they sound very authoritative, a lot of authority saying these things. And right away, people will take to that authority. Wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. Wow, this dude or this woman is serious. and they won't do the research themselves to find out if it's really true. And that's one that really gets my goat. Why don't we research anything for ourselves anymore? We think because somebody looks smart or sounds like, they have some kind of authority or, authority on the subject that they're talking about. I've been digging into these truths and conspiracies for over 40 years. I know what I'm talking about. Well, he must. He's been doing this for 40 years or 30 years or 20 years. That doesn't necessarily mean they're right. I've come across a lot of people in my life who have done things for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And pardon my French, but they had it so ass backwards, I was surprised that they made it that long on the knowledge that they had about a given subject. And we all know people like that. We have to do our own research. We have to look into these things to find out if what we're hearing is true, false, or sometimes even delusional. Because if we don't think that there's not any delusion going on in this truth community thing, well, we got another thing coming, because there is. Hey man, be your own advocate, be your own best friend, be your own historian and researcher. Look into these things. Just don't hear it and say, gee, that sounds good, I'm going to make a choice to believe it. Flat out, hands down, not even going to entertain the thought, this could be wrong. And that's where this stuff gets harmful. Very harmful. And it leads a lot of people down the rabbit hole of no return. And I've seen people in my life, people I've been acquainted with, normal people, happy people, spiritual people, living a normal, happy, balanced life, and they know what's up with, the government and all this. They knew what was up. They weren't completely just walking around looking to become a slave of the New World Order. I mean, not by any stretch. But then these people get involved in some of these very dark truther movements. And I've seen these people make a complete transformation in their lives. No more joy. It's all worry, stress, and anger. No more faith. It's angry, hellfire, brimstone, dogmatic. It's this way and there is no other way. People that loved other people, judging others. I don't like how you live. I don't like the color of your skin. I don't like the political party you belong to. I don't like that you're political at all. Hatred, judgment, afraid. Practically living in a house with no furniture, living in a big empty box. Or some of them living in a big empty box cluttered up with car parts and camping equipment, because that's all they do now. Work on their cars and go camping. Again, there's nothing wrong with working on your car and going camping. But, again, anything to an extreme, I think, can be a detriment. But I've seen some of these people make such a transformation in their lives, you wouldn't even know who they used to be. And you'd find it hard to believe who they used to be. Some of them have left wives, husbands, families, children. Because now, according to the truth community, they're awake. They see the world for what it is. But all you idiots, including my wife and kids, well, you're all still asleep and I can't be around this. I can't be around you asleep sheep anymore. Take off and leave their family. Is that healthy? I think not. Doesn't spell healthy, doesn't spell normal in my book. I mean, that's just my opinion, and opinions may vary, but that doesn't seem like it's normal or a good thing. That this is the reaction and the transformation that some of this stuff puts people through. And now I saw that, I believe it was on 60 Minutes, they had someone on there saying that on some of these platforms like Google and YouTube, that they actually have counselors or re-education counselors available to the staff who review some of these videos, because there's so much truth and conspiracy and truth community stuff out there that after 7-8 hours of reviewing all these videos, making sure that they're okay for YouTube, and it's truther after truther after truther, that it starts to psychologically affect the person watching the videos, or they start buying into some of this stuff. They see so much of it. Now, some of it, again, might be good information. I'm not saying it's all bad, because like I said, there's some very balanced, intelligent, and spiritual people in the truth community. But it almost seems like for every one person that is balanced and logical and giving a message that is well researched and well thought out, there's 10 or 20 of the extremists, because that's just what we do on planet Earth, I guess. Anything, people always have to take it to the extreme, whether it be religion, whether it be conspiracy theories, whether it be truth communities, whatever it is, we always have to have the extremists, the people taking it to the incredible extremes. So a steady diet of this, I could see where this could be a bad thing. But then we have many in the truth community I see going, many of the employees of YouTube and many of these platforms are beginning to believe the truth, so they got to start unindoctrinating them. I mean, do we believe that? Is that it might be to a degree. There might be some people out there who want to keep everybody just marching in the machine. But I'm sure for some of these companies like YouTube and others, they just want to keep their employees sane because they see what it's doing to them. Truth can shock us. It can drop our jaw. It can make us do a complete 360 and say, what the heck is going on? But in my opinion, my experience, how I've seen other people act or react to actual truth, is never becoming a fearful, bitter, angry, judgmental extremist who's afraid to even turn on a TV or a radio, or he's afraid that something's going to take possession of his brain and make him a zombie for the elitist New World Order. I always go by the saying of Christ, by their fruits you should know them. And if that's the fruit that you're seeing somebody's movement or teachings having on people, I'd say that's a bad apple. So I would say before we start waving our flags going, yeah, these people are hearing the truth. They're getting, educated, and, now they're trying to keep them from believing the truth. I think we need to step back and realize if we're jumping up and down on the hilltops, rejoicing and saying things like that, might it make us look as crazy as the crazy people? Because we're acting like we're too damn blind to say that there's problems in this movement. There's very delusional people in this movement. There's some people that are, probably in need of a psychiatric evaluation in this truth movement. But we're not acknowledging that. We're too proud, too prideful, too full of ourselves that we can't sit back and just honestly say, yeah, with some of the people out there that pass themselves off as being truthers, and some of them are very popular, somebody listening to them 8 hours a day, maybe they should have a counselor on hand to bounce ideas off of and get a little bit of perspective and balance. Because just like big, scary, mind-controlling fundamentalist religion, that stuff will throw you for a loop, brother and sister. And if we're too blind, too proud, too whatever to see that, even if we're in the truth community, then what can I tell you? In my opinion, it's like you're then throwing in with those people. Well, they're trying to speak some truth, so, I'm for it. Doesn't matter how crazy they are, how crazy they talk. Half the stuff they say isn't true. Well, maybe a quarter or less of the stuff they say is maybe true. We've got to use a little discernment here. And that's what I always mean about extremes. We've got to use common sense, ladies and gentlemen. And if you're one of my truther friends listening to this podcast, on whatever platform you're listening to it on, before you comment, before you throw down some words trying to look, highly impressive and spiritual and educated, think about what I'm saying, because it's true. If you think that every single solitary person in this so-called truth community has integrity, is honest, knows what they're talking about, no problem, no crazies, I'd say you have your head in the sand. And if you're one of the good truthers, the good work that you're doing is being greatly jeopardized by these other people that are just having all this nonsense out there that's being harmful and detrimental and even psychologically impacting people in a negative way. And see, folks, that's one of the things that always spins my brain inside my skull. And you see it with religion. You see it with some people in philosophy. You see it in this truther movement. It always comes down to, if you're not afraid, if you're not very afraid, then you don't have the truth. You're not believing the right way. Why do we always think we need to be scared, on high alert, ready for who's going to attack, whether it's another person or the government or the military, another country, the devil, whatever the case may be? Why do we always think we have to be afraid and extreme and so dark in our thinking and our words and our actions in order to actually have some form of truth. If that's heaven, if that's what people think heaven is, wouldn't that be a hell? Hey, let's all die and go to heaven so we can live in an eternal, perpetual state of fear and morbidity. That's not what it's about, man. None of it. And that's not how truth should be. And the amazing thing is that no matter what group you look at, religion, truthers, whatever the case may be, it's always the people that preach the fear that have the greatest influence and following. And we need to change that. And we only change that by doing the inner work ourselves. What is truth? What is spirituality? What is God? What is whatever it is we happen to be thinking about? There may be unpleasant facts that we have to be aware of in our lives, in our world. But does that mean we should be running around just full of fear and anger and judgment and morbidity and just darkness and heaviness? I don't think so. And I think this whole truth community needs to take an honest look at itself. And those who are doing a good work need to start to separate themselves from the ones who are doing a bad work and saying, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, we're for truth. We're for finding things out that may be uncomfortable for people to hear. Maybe it was uncomfortable for me to hear or to find out, but we don't stand with those other people. That's not truth. That's something else. And people need to begin to separate themselves from those very heavy, dark, packed with fear movements. That's just all over the place telling people they need to be afraid, be very afraid. Making people afraid isn't truth. That's just getting an emotional or psychological reaction out of someone and hoping that you can click that little button in their head where they will look at you as being their next leader, an authority figure, and the one they need to follow, or they're going to be in big, big trouble if they don't. Because guess what? The more people you can get to think that way about you, your channel, your podcast, your vlog, whatever it happens to be, more money. Because isn't it funny? All these people hate places like YouTube and the like. But 99% of them are monetized. They'll take that money. They'll have no problem coming on YouTube asking for monetary support. And people give it to them. We got to use a little common sense and start to separate the wheat from the chaff. Because there's an awful lot of chaff. There's an awful lot of garbage out there. And those of you who are listening, who are in the truth community, if you don't want to be flushed down the drain with everybody else, then start to separate yourself from the garbage. Because eventually and inevitably, the garbage is going to get flushed. And if you hang on to it, if you cling to it, if you join yourself with it, chances are you'll be flushed as well. And if you're someone out there in the truth community, or you have a podcast where you're talking about spiritual things or whatever it is you're talking about, think about the impact that your message is going to have on your listening audience. Is it going to scare them? Is it going to give them hope? Is it going to build their faith and their confidence? Is it going to give them some measure of peace in their life? Is it going to make them your mental slave and follower because you're looking to hook them? Think about what your message, what you're conveying to your listening audience. Because I'm telling you right now, if you're a good, honest, decent, moral person, what you say on a platform like this, someone's life may depend on it. Because you don't know what your heavy message of fear might prompt somebody to do out of desperation or anger or just being fed up with it all. Or you don't know what your message of hope and love and just human decency might bring somebody back from the edge of all that. But see, I don't think we think about that kind of thing. We're more concerned with getting our message out there because I speak the truth. Well, who the hell are you, man? And what makes you think you have the ultimate truth? None of us do. And I really think we need to ponder what we're going to say before we say it, because it's going to have an impact on someone, maybe a lot of someone's, if we grow in that wonderful thing called popularity out there in video or podcast land. We all have a responsibility to one another. So what are you handing off to the people that are listening to you? I'm Paul James Caiden. This is the Spirit Side. I thank you again for listening. And remember, folks, do your own research. I've said that repeatedly since the inception of this podcast. Do your own research. Just don't believe something because someone says it. Because somebody like myself and many other people, we can be sitting here behind this microphone yapping, and we may say something that we believe in, or we read something and yeah, here's the facts, and we could be wrong because we're human beings. I'm not infallible truth. Nobody is. So do your own research. And don't be someone looking for the Pied Piper to follow. You don't need to follow anybody except your own heart, your own soul, that still small voice within that is God speaking directly to you. And that voice is always loving, kind, peaceable, moral, good, joyous, happy, all things that are beneficial. It's never going to tell you to harm yourself or somebody else or any kind of nonsense like that. You don't need a leader. You have a built-in spiritual GPS system. You just got to learn how to tap into it, listen to it, hear it, and then follow it. Thank you again, everybody, for listening. I appreciate it. And I'll see you next time here on the spirit side.